Hello there, and as usual, I'm Aaron from Last Stand Gamers, and welcome. So today we're talking about building an exploration rover, and in fact building one that is suitable for our situation. I've seen many of the comments on previous videos, and people are trying to work out what is the best type of exploration rover, what's the best power source for it, and what sort of size should we build. So we're going to look at some of the features of these guys today, some of the advantages of them, and some of the disadvantages as well. So first off, I'm going to show you the one in the middle. This is the only one that's actually heavily modded. The other ones are completely vanilla. So we've got this freewheel design. I'm using the Sankian blocks. You see we've got little micro batteries up here on the top, as well as this very useful utility arm, where we've got a drill on the front, and we also have a landing gear on the back, so we can drill, take core samples, and move them into the loading bay at the back. But that's not really that important in the world of space engineers, because we've got them sensors that just detect the resources below us without having to drill or take samples. Now we're moving on to the power pack. So the two main options is solar, or we have uranium power. Now uranium will run out eventually. Solar power will not run out as long as you keep the batteries charged and you don't mess up the rover or you put in a dark spot. It'll last forever. Now the next thing I want to talk about is affordability. Since you're going to be sending these out to distant places and you're probably not going to be able to recover all of them, you want them to be cheap and affordable. We've got a rover like this, very small, quite cheap, quite affordable, where on the other hand, this is a very expensive rover. It's using lots of advanced components, so this is something you would want to recover or visit that planet shortly after it's done its little expansion. So over here we all have a sort of mid-class. We've got the three batteries in the center that are used and quite expensive to build in some cases. We've got a solar panel on the top, but we've not got anything complicated like an arm. We've just got a static camera on the front, so we'd have to rotate the whole of the drone, where on this one we can actually sit this up at our location and look around with the camera. We've also got a spotlight. Now one disadvantage of this particular drone is if you're going to use antennas to actually control it from a remote station. Now this means it has to have line of sight. If you go behind a mountain, you could risk losing connection, where the antennas are a much more stable source. So over here we've just got the small one, probably one of my favorite designs. The only disadvantage of this is wheelbase, that I'll move on to next to. So you can actually see we've got quite a wild wheelbase there, where we can have rocks and other things get stuck underneath, and then the rover gets stuck and we can't explore any more of the area. Moving on to a rover like this, we're using bigger wheels and we've got better ground clearance. I'll show you these driving around in a moment in time, but you can see we've got the much better ground clearance. That is very important. And we've also got the solar panel pack. Now this one also has a rotor on the top that controls the camera, but the disadvantage of this, it doesn't have any up or down sort of angling, so you can't look directly below the rover or up towards a mountain top. Where on this one you have a super complicated arm with all the tools you need, but like I said, it's super complicated, and we've also got the problem of a wild wheelbase. Now we can defeat the sort of wide wheelbase situation by having wheels closer together. Now having those wheels closer together will mean it'll be able to straddle over different sort of terrain a lot easier. You can see we've got tight wheelbase here on this one, even though this is 2 wheels, but 3 is ideal so you don't get stuck on a point in the center. So just a few things you want to take in consideration when building your rover. So we'll take a look at the more advanced rover first. You can see we've actually brought it off the pad, and one of the problems with this is it tends to kick into gear very fast, and you're top heavy because of the actual arm itself. So if I hit the brakes here, you can see we're tilting a little bit to the front. We'll reverse it a little bit further back, and I'll show you some of the tools. Give it a little bit of a turn here so we can see that, and then hit the brakes in that position. Now if I access my menu, I can actually start rotating the tools back and forth, and something I've done here is I put a camera upside down, so when I actually rotate that main arm like this to use the actual gripple or the drill, for instance, I can actually use them quite effectively. So as we take this small little drone out for a little test drive, it reminds me a little bit of the bot from Star Wars that makes the squeaking noises as it runs around the corridors. But the thing with this that we need to take into consideration is that the blocks the wheels are on are actually going to be scraping against the ground, making us turn in and everything a lot slower. You can see we've got both wheels turning to actually accelerate the process, but at the same time, turning this thing around is a much slower. And we've also got that static camera at the front. That means it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So if I actually view the view from the static camera, I can't see what my wheels are doing. But at the same time, I've got the Sage camera activated, so I've not got that stupid gritty grind. And we're moving at such a rate where it's very realistic for a rover. You're not going to miss much on the terrain, but at the same time, you don't want to really be going this slow, because it's just going to bore the hell out of you. You'd have to literally set it on autopilot and drive to that next rock. It's going to take me about 5 minutes to probably get over there. Anyway, if I skip back to F8, and we can see that rover's just on the drive there. We'll have a quick look at one of the larger Rovers here. We've got this one to choose from. And we've also got the 6-wheeled one that we'll have a look at now. And the friction setting is very important depending on what planet you're on, because if you're on a low gravity planet, you need to get a lot more grip, because you'll notice that your ship is bouncing and gliding along the terrain. But with that power setting, you can notice how we can turn this and move this along the terrain quite easily, and this is a lot faster than that slower Rover. So let's actually have a look at our camera view. We've got a very low sort of camera perspective, so seeing over that next ridge is going to be a little bit difficult. Let's see our other camera. So we've got a going away camera as well, and we can also vary our batteries. We can turn our batteries on and off, so if we want to use one cell at a time and get maximum sort of effectiveness, or we want them all to drain and charge from the solar panel. So if I switch back to that over there, we can see this explore the terrain. Let's have a go with its suspension over this more difficult off-road section. Now, taking a look at this Rover, you can see how it moves over the terrain quite generously. You can see how the wheels and suspension are traversing over the different terrain very well, and if I bring it over to this direction, it'll actually stop there. So let's actually activate P and see how easy it is to activate the arm. So we've got the camera on 1, and we also have the rotors on 8, so we can reverse that up and down. Okay, very nice. And if I press reverse on that again, so we've got a very minimum or sort of minimalistic arc that we can look up and down. So you can either look down and in front. Let's have a look what that looks like. Okay, or we can look directly forward. Very nice indeed. And what does 9 do? So 9 actually raises this up. Now this could be very useful for actually looking around over the distant terrain. Say there's a mountain or a hill in front of you. So if I skip back to F8, you can see that's actually raised up. Let's raise that back down. These are just really cool features that you can add to your Rover just to help balance them out, make them a little bit more effective for exploring. Now, a situation you don't want to find yourself in is like this, with the Rover on the roof and you are miles and miles away. There's no way that this is going to flip back over, so making sure your Rover design is very stable is quite important. Anyway, I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and hopefully it's inspired you and give you some thoughts when it comes to building your own Rovers and what makes a good design against what makes one that's just going to get stuck, left and abandoned out there in space. Our arm into a better sort of place there, so that's good, and we can do backflips. Wow, I was totally expecting that to happen. Great.